"You don't belong here. Get out." In 3 minutes, the whole gym would fall silent, but no one saw it coming. The shout tore through the gym like an order of exile. A young woman, her hands still smelling faintly of bleach, stood motionless under the lights. Rachel Miles, the new cleaning staff never once called by name, was stepping onto the ring like she didn't belong. Phones lifted. LED lights reflected off the worn gloves in her hands. They laughed, mocked, called her Mop Girl. Her opponent, Eli Grant, the gym's showman, smirked wide. "Don't worry, I'll keep it quick. You can go back to mopping up blood." Rachel didn't respond. She tightened the laces on her gloves, eyes locked on him. One step onto the mat. One slow breath. And in just a few minutes, everything would go dead silent. Cliffside Athletic was a gym with two faces. The front polished like a showroom. Floor-to-ceiling mirrors, detox drinks lined in glass coolers, trainers with sculpted chests and matching smiles. Everything staged for image. The back raw. Blood-stained mats, cracked leather bags, taped knuckles, and shallow breaths between rounds. Rachel walked through both every morning. At exactly 6:23 a.m., she unlocked the side door. The hallway lights flickered once, blinking like they weren't ready to wake up either. Her cleaning cart rolled out one wheel, groaning softly every third rotation. The mop handle leaned against her shoulder. She wore a faded gray tee tucked into navy work pants with a worn-out blue sweatshirt tied at the waist. Her ID badge clipped low at the belt, just Rachel. No one asked her name. No one paused. To them, she was background only noticeable if something was dirty. It started small. A spill on a bench near the ring, pre-workout mix neon blue. Rachel stepped in with a towel, silent, careful not to interrupt. She leaned just slightly onto the mat's edge, wiping the platform clean. That was all it took. "Yo, janitor's getting brave today," someone called out from the treadmills. Laughter followed. Eli Grant, shirtless gloves, half-laced, the kind of guy who walked like the gym was his, grinned like he'd scored the punchline of the day. "Careful, sweetheart," he said, voice loud enough for the mirrors to catch it. "Step in there, and the mop's gonna have to fight for you." Rachel didn't look up, just wrung out the towel and kept cleaning. Behind her, a phone tilted to record. Another voice chimed in. "At least it'll be a clean knockout." More laughter, more eyes. The first joke had landed and the gym smelled blood. The joke didn't stay the joke, it multiplied. "Maybe she thinks she's part of the program," someone said near the heavy bags. "Mop your way to muscle." Another laughed. Cliffside's new janitor circuit. Wipe the sweat, then earn the bruises. Phones turned. Camera lenses found her. A girl stretching by the water cooler angled her phone without subtlety. A guy on the leg press nudged his friend. "She gonna mop the ring, or fight in it?" Both someone answered. The laughter was layered now, teasing, rehearsed like a roast show with a live audience. Rachel still didn't flinch. She packed her towel into the bucket, rinsed it once, adjusted the mop handle, and kept moving. Her silence didn't protect her. It fed them. The gym floor became a stage. And she, whether she liked it or not, was the center act of a circus built on ridicule. "Come on, Brandon," the junior coach with more arms than awareness grinned from the ropes. "Let her finish disinfecting your ego, Eli." A few chuckles broke out. Eli didn't miss a beat. "Nah, seriously," he said, pointing a gloved hand toward Rachel. "Let's give the crowd a show. 1 round. I promise not to bleed on her shoes." It landed like a dare. Not serious, not yet, but no one stopped it either. Rachel didn't respond. She dipped the mop into the bucket, wrung it slowly, and began wiping the mat again, same rhythm, same calm. "She going to clean or fight?" someone shouted. Both another snapped back. Laughter again. Brandon raised his voice. "Someone grab her gloves. Let's see what Mop Girl's got." Just like that, the tone shifted. It wasn't just mocking anymore. It was a challenge dressed as a joke, and the whole gym was watching. She didn't answer. Not when Brandon waved his hand like a game show host. Not when Eli bounced on his toes, grinning like a kid in on the joke. Not when the phones came up, lights blinking like applause. Rachel just packed her towel, clipped the lid on the bucket, and rolled the cart 2 steps back. Same cart, same squeaky wheel, same rhythm, stitched into her every morning. Someone muttered, "Guess that's a yes." Another voice laughed, "She's gonna mop the ring with him." From the front desk, Kyle didn't even look up from his phone. Let her spar and sanitize at the same time, he said loud enough for the mirrors to catch it. The line got laughs, but Brandon didn't laugh. He raised a hand again, half dare, half shrug. "Come on, let's give her gloves. If she thinks she's got hands, let her show 'em." Rachel didn't flinch. She just wiped her palms on her sweatshirt and kept walking toward the ring. She didn't speak, didn't nod, didn't look at the crowd, just bent slightly at the cart, lifted the towel bin, and reached underneath. Her hand came back holding something worn, faded, but unmistakable boxing gloves. Not rental gear, not borrowed, hers. The room quieted, not silent, but close. A few laughs flickered into awkward coughs. Someone filming zoomed in. The gloves were weathered at the seams, leather thinned near the knuckles, the kind you don't buy, you earn. She held them in one hand like she'd held them 1,000 times before. Eli barked a laugh. "This is gonna go viral. Somebody cue the Rocky theme." Rachel turned without a word. Her badge still clipped to her waistband. Her sweatshirt loose at the waist. Her walk steady. Not angry, not defiant, just certain. She walked to the edge of the ring and set the gloves down, careful, deliberate, like placing something sacred, not showy. Eli bounced in place, still playing to the crowd. "I'll go easy," he grinned. "Don't want her quitting halfway through round 1. The floor won't mop itself." More phones lifted. "Blink and you'll miss it," someone whispered near the dumbbell rack. A girl in a branded tank leaned toward her friend. "She doesn't actually think this is real." "Right." Rachel knelt beside the gloves and began wrapping her hands, slow, practiced, precise. The tape pulled taut. Her fingers moved without hesitation, like memory guiding muscle. Nobody could place it, but the room got quieter. It wasn't nerves, it was confusion. The janitor knew how to wrap her hands, and she wasn't in a rush. The bell wasn't official, but someone hit it anyway, just for effect. The clang rang out like a countdown. Phones were already recording. Eli rolled his neck side to side, then stepped onto the mat, grinning like he owned it. Rachel stood wrapped and ready. She picked up her gloves, slid them on, left, then right. Tightened the straps, tugged once. No theatrics, no warm-up shuffle. Just calm. Brandon leaned over the ropes, smirking. "You want gloves, mop?" he called. "Not that you'll need 'em long." She stepped into the ring. No pause, no glance at the crowd, no fear. Her badge still clipped to her waistband. Her sleeves rolled once at the wrists. She moved like someone stepping into a routine, not a fight. But something in the room shifted. Not respect, not yet, but attention. The kind that says, "Wait, is this real?" "She gonna run before the bell," someone snorted from the treadmills. $10 says she bails another added. 15 says she gets dropped in under 20 seconds. Laughter again. This time, sharper, confident. A guy near the bench press opened a protein bar, already settling in like it was primetime TV. Eli's crew lined the ropes, tossing jokes like warm-ups. "Try not to hit her too hard. Champ might lose your gym discount. Tell her to aim for your mop instead." Brandon scribbled the match on the whiteboard near the lockers. 12-20. Eli versus Mop. Rachel didn't react. She stood in her corner gloves at her sides, gaze steady. She wasn't showy. She wasn't smiling. She was still. And in that stillness, something unfamiliar pulsed in the air. Not excitement, not yet fear, just miscalculation. The bell rang, sharp, clean final. Eli stepped forward with bounce in his knees, rolling his shoulders like it was a warm-up. He tossed a light jab into the air, turning a slow circle for the crowd gathering just beyond the ropes. Someone clapped. Someone whooped. A phone chimed as it began recording. Rachel didn't move. She stood in her corner gloves, resting at her waist, feet planted, shoulders relaxed. Chin tucked, eyes up, still. Eli jabbed toward her, playful, measured, a light shot to the chest. She slipped it with a single step to the left. No counter, no expression, just absence. Someone near the dumbbell rack shouted, "Show her the broomstick combo, more laughter, more angles." But beneath the noise, something smaller started ticking like a timer set too low. Rachel wasn't just in the ring, she was dismantling the rhythm, and no one had noticed yet. Eli threw 2 more punches, jab cross, quick showy. Rachel wasn't there, her back foot pivoted, weight shifting with ghost-like precision. His glove cut through empty space. Brandon leaned on the ropes, still grinning. "Gotta punch where she is." Eli not where she was yesterday. Laughter, but not as loud this time. Rachel shifted again, left, then back, her eyes locked not on Eli's face but his ribs, his breath, his weight. A trainer sitting on a bench by the heavy bags paused mid-conversation, eyes narrowing. "She's not just dodging," someone whispered near the mirror rack. "She's reading him." The man with the clipboard, one of the veteran coaches, sat forward, quiet, studying. "That's not beginner stuff," he muttered. "That's drilled." Eli's smile faltered just a notch. He adjusted his stance, stepping in harder. But Rachel had already adjusted. She wasn't surviving. She was setting a trap. Eli stepped in with more weight now, shoulder, forward gloves tighter, jaw clenched. He wasn't joking anymore. He threw a right, faster, harder. Rachel ducked low, spun off the line. The glove whooshed past her ear and hit nothing but air. Again, a hush rippled around the ring. Not silence, but something close, like a crowd starting to hold its breath. Rachel didn't counter, didn't gloat. She just turned to reset her stance and watched him. Her breathing was steady, her gloves still loose at her waist. She moved like this wasn't a fight, it was a routine. And Eli, for the first time, looked unsure. Phones were still out, but no one was laughing now. From the bench, the clipboard coach stood up. Someone near the wall said quietly, "This is different." Rachel shifted her foot barely an inch. Eli charged again. She didn't move, not yet. Eli wound up heavier this time. A left feint, then a right hook aimed to finish what the jokes had started. Rachel waited. Not frozen. Ready. Her right foot slid back half an inch. Her weight shifted. Then she struck. A single tight hook, no wind-up, no warning, flat and fast, aimed low beneath the ribs. It landed with a sound that didn't echo, it sank. A blunt thud. Deep. Final. Eli stopped mid-motion. His gloves dropped. His breath caught, and then he folded knees, buckling arms, limp body curling forward as he hit the mat with a heavy thud. No bounce, no stagger, just down. His face went pale. He clutched his side, gasping in silence. Phones lowered. No one laughed. No one moved. The clipboard coach was already halfway to the ring. The sound of Eli hitting the mat was still echoing when the clipboard coach climbed through the ropes. "Back," he snapped. "Don't touch him." Brandon stood frozen on the apron, his earlier grin replaced with wide eyes. "Is he breathing okay?" "Yeah," the coach muttered, kneeling beside Eli. "She got him clean." Rachel took a single step back, gloves still on. Her posture relaxed, but not triumphant. Eli hadn't moved. His face was gray breath, shallow. One glove twitched against the mat. The gym's playlist buzzed faintly from the speakers, still playing something upbeat, completely out of place. A phone slipped from someone's hand and hit the mat with a hollow plastic clap. No one picked it up. Rachel didn't look at the cameras, didn't turn to the crowd. She just waited. Still, present, unshaken. The front door opened with a dull clatter. Coach Ben stepped in, keys still in hand, hoodie pulled halfway up by the wind. He was the kind of man whose silence carried weight, who only spoke when it mattered. His boots echoed once across the polished floor. Then he stopped, just past the welcome mat, eyes locked on the ring. He didn't ask what happened. He asked, "Is that Rachel Miles in the ring?" Every head turned, not toward Ben, toward her. She was standing near Eli, one glove resting lightly on the top rope, her breathing steady, badge still clipped to her waist, her sweat already beginning to dry. No one answered. Not yet. Ben stepped forward slowly. His voice was calm. "Someone want to tell me why Rachel Miles is wearing janitor clothes and sparring our amateur clown." The silence cracked. Recognition had arrived. One of the junior coaches blinked, confused. "Wait, her name's what." Ben didn't stop walking. "Rachel Miles," he said, voice flat but firm. "Southpaw, 3-time regional lightweight champion. Ran defense drills in this building before half of you could throw a straight punch." The ripple hit fast. A few people turned toward the far wall where faded photos hung in cracked frames, mostly ignored. "She used to coach here," Ben added, "before the renovations, before the sponsors, before the lighting made everyone look like a contender." A trainee dropped his shaker bottle. Someone near the mirrors muttered, "No way. That can't be her." Ben pointed past the treadmill bay, checked the team photo, middle row blue gloves, cracked knuckles. Same eyes. A kid jogged over. A long beat. Then his voice broke the stillness. "Oh, my God. That's her." The trainee stood frozen in front of the photo-dusty frame, plastic cover cracked at the corners. There she was, middle row, blue gloves, eyes locked straight at the camera, no smile. Just focus. Rachel Miles. The same woman standing now in janitor's clothes, gloves loose at her sides, saying nothing. Brandon stepped off the apron, glancing between the ring and the whiteboard. His voice was flat. I didn't know." Ben didn't even look at him. "You didn't ask," he said. "You just looked." Another coach crouched by the ring post ran a finger along the edge of the canvas. A faded line of black marker half rubbed away by years of sweat and bleach was still faintly visible. L. Miles. One name. Quiet. Undeniable. No one spoke, but the story was no longer in her silence. It was in what they had chosen not to see. No one called her name. No one dared. Rachel stood still, peeling the tape from her wrists, slow and deliberate. The gloves dropped beside her shoes, soft, controlled, final. She didn't look at the crowd. She didn't look at Eli, still on the mat. She looked at nothing, and then she moved out of the ring past Coach Ben, who didn't stop her. He didn't have to. "She used to coach here," he said quietly to the room. "Before the merch deals, before the mirrors. Back when you fought to earn time on the mat, and you didn't waste it." The silence deepened. Rachel reached her cart. The mop handle leaned exactly where she left it. The blue sweatshirt tied around her waist was still damp with sweat, not from fear, but focus. She wrapped the sweatshirt tighter, gripped the mop, and kept walking, not to make a statement, just to finish what she came to do. She didn't look back. The mop squeaked softly every few steps, wheels turning just as they had before, but now every sound landed heavier. Every movement drew eyes. Brandon stepped aside as she passed, staring at the floor. He stood near a poster taped to the wall, one that had read, "Lightweight Challenge, Who's Brave Enough?" He peeled it down, folded it once, tucked it under his arm. At the front desk, Kyle reached for the whiteboard. Eli versus Mop. He erased it slowly. The marker squeaked stubborn in places. When the ink finally faded, he didn't write anything new. On the bench near the mirror wall, a woman who had live-streamed the match earlier was scrolling through her feed. She found the clip, paused, then deleted it. No one told her to. The playlist still played, but no one heard it. The gym hadn't emptied, but it had changed. She moved through the space like always, spray bottle in one hand, rag in the other. But now no one ignored her. Not out of recognition, out of reflection. By the vending machine, she picked up a half-empty protein shake someone had left behind and tossed it into the trash. No one offered to help. No one dared to interrupt. Near the lockers, a trainee who'd laughed the loudest earlier now stood staring at his hands wrapped but shaky. He didn't look up as she passed. He just stepped aside. Rachel didn't acknowledge him. Didn't need to. At the dumbbell racks, she wiped down handles, same routine as every morning. But the voices that used to echo through the gym had softened. Conversations were whispers. Footsteps felt careful. Even the air carried a kind of hush. She didn't demand respect. She created stillness, and left everyone else to sit in it. By mid-morning, the gym returned to motion, but not momentum. A few trainees shadowboxed near the far wall, but their punches lacked rhythm. Others stretched in silence, stealing glances whenever Rachel passed. The sparring schedule, once crowded with names, now sat blank. The gloves on the wall had been rehung with unusual care, knuckles, aligned straps folded. Even the floor mats, always a little chaotic after a morning rush, lay smoother underfoot. Rachel walked the back corridor, refilled her spray bottle, and returned. She didn't hurry. She didn't slow. Just moved with that same quiet certainty. Like this space, this job, this rhythm belonged to her, always had, and now everyone else was catching up to that truth. Tony, one of the older coaches, stood near the back wall, arms crossed. His eyes followed her not with regret, with recognition. He nodded once. Rachel didn't nod back. She didn't need to. By the time Rachel reached the back door, most of the trainees had filtered out. A few lingered, stretching or scrolling quieter than usual, more deliberate in their movements, like the echo of what happened still lived in the walls. She paused at the exit, turned once not to look at anyone but at the ring. It sat empty. The ropes sagged in stillness light, casting long shadows across the mat, shadows shaped like memory, like something had happened there that no one knew how to explain. Her gloves still hung on a hook behind the desk, damp from the round drying slow. A hoodie was being folded nearby. The man folding it glanced up when she passed, then quickly looked away. Rachel didn't speak, didn't linger. She stepped outside. No applause, no exit music. But the gym, every inch of it, knew it had just been cleaned in more ways than one. The next morning, the gym opened on time. Same lights, same lockers, same playlist. But everything felt muted. Someone wiped down the bench near the window before using it. The towel stack was freshly folded, edges aligned, like someone cared for once. Kyle at the front desk didn't greet with his usual smirk. He just nodded at the first member who walked in, low, respectful, uncertain. On the wall above the lockers, taped carefully to the metal siding, was a plain sheet of paper. No color, no title, just a sentence written in bold block letters. She didn't say a word. We heard her anyway. No one claimed it, no one questioned it, but they read it, one by one. And for the first time in a long time, no one joked near the ring. Rachel wasn't there, but her presence lingered, like chalk dust that never quite wipes away. You just watched a simple woman, overlooked, underestimated, not for what she lacked, but for what she chose not to show. They mocked her silence. They measured her by her uniform. They laughed at her job title, her shoes, her stillness. But Rachel Miles never corrected them. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't fight back with words. She didn't ask for space. She took it. One step, one look, one punch. In a place built on noise, she spoke through discipline. What they mistook for weakness was actually mastery. What they called invisible was a legend choosing not to perform. This wasn't revenge. It was presence. And sometimes the loudest voice in the room doesn't speak at all. Rachel didn't need to win the crowd. She didn't need their cheers, their posts, or their sudden apologies. She wasn't there to prove she still had it. She was there because she never lost it. And more than that, because she knew something they didn't. That real power doesn't posture. It doesn't need a spotlight. It doesn't crave recognition. It just shows up every day. Quiet, consistent, relentless. She didn't train to be seen. She trained to be ready. So when the moment came when the whole gym turned her into a joke, she didn't rise to the bait. She rose to the standard she had always carried inside her. That's what shook the room. Not the punch, not the silence, but the realization that they had mistaken humility for insignificance, and now they'd never forget her again. This story didn't just happen at Cliffside. It happens everywhere. In offices, on buses, in classrooms, behind counters, beneath uniforms. People like Rachel walk through the background every day, unnoticed, unheard, unseen, not because they lack value, but because others aren't looking. And when the world finally notices, it's usually too late. By the time the punch lands, the silence speaks louder than any headline. The damage isn't just to ego, it's to illusion, because what they thought was invisible was never gone. It was just choosing when to appear. Rachel wasn't trying to teach them a lesson, but they learned one anyway. Not about boxing, about bias, about what it means to judge by surface, to confuse quiet with weakness, and to forget that strength can be soft, steady, and unseen. Until it's undeniable. They didn't say sorry, not out loud, but the change was obvious. The guy who shouted the first joke now showed up early and left his phone in his bag. The woman who filmed it live started stretching by the heavy bags away from the mirrors. Even Eli, when he returned a week later, still sore, still limping, didn't speak when he passed the hook where Rachel's gloves still hung. He just nodded, not to anyone in particular, just in acknowledgement. To the weight in the air, to the silence she left behind, to the fact that what embarrassed him wasn't losing the round but realizing he never saw her coming. They all carried it now. Not guilt, not shame, just the memory of someone they didn't understand until it was too late, and that kind of memory doesn't fade. It rewrites you. Rachel didn't return. Not the next day, not the next week. Not when new names filled the sparring board or when Cliffside posted photos of sweaty champions with polished gloves and perfect smiles. But she was still there. In the way people paused before speaking, in how the ring was cleaned without being asked, in the towel stacks neat now folded to the edges, in the silence before each round like everyone was listening for something they didn't want to miss again. No one spoke her name, not because they forgot, because it held weight now. Saying it out loud felt unearned. She wasn't part of the gym anymore. She had become part of its memory, its conscience, the kind you can't erase, the kind that lingers in the corner of your eye when you think no one's watching. But someone always is. Time passed. The gym moved on, kind of. New members came, new gloves hung, new playlists echoed off the walls, but the atmosphere never returned to what it was before. Too much had been seen, and more importantly, too much had been felt. There was no plaque for her, no ceremony, no tribute video, just a small hook behind the desk where her gloves still hung, weathered quiet, untouched. Sometimes they swayed slightly when someone walked by. Sometimes they didn't, but no one moved them. Tony, the older coach, kept showing up early. He started every day by checking the ring like a ritual. Not looking for dust, looking for meaning. The ring felt heavier now, not broken, just grounded. Because Rachel never raised her voice. She never gave a speech, but she left something behind. And everyone who stepped into that gym knew you don't ignore that kind of presence. People started training differently. Not louder, not harder, cleaner. More focused, less for the camera, more for the work. No one said it was because of Rachel. They didn't have to. Her absence had become a measuring stick, one no one dared compare themselves to out loud, but all felt inside. A rookie once asked Brandon, "Who was she really?" Brandon didn't answer, not because he didn't know, because there wasn't a short version. She wasn't a story, she was a reminder. That quiet isn't weakness, that strength doesn't need announcement, that respect is something you give before someone demands it. The gym didn't hang her photo, it didn't need to. She was in the way people wrapped their hands now, in how they stepped into the ring not to perform but to prove something to themselves. She was still here, not in presence, in standard. Maybe you've seen someone like Rachel, at work, on the train, in a hallway you pass every day without thinking twice. Someone quiet. Someone overlooked. Someone whose strength isn't loud but unshakable. And maybe if you're honest, you've done what they did. Stayed silent. Lowered your head. Carried more than people realized. Or maybe you've done what the crowd did. Laughed, assumed, looked, but didn't see. Rachel's story isn't just about a gym. It's about all of us. About the way we measure worth, about how we miss what matters until it hits us in the chest, clean, fast, and unforgettable. She didn't speak that day to teach a lesson, but now you can't unlearn it. Think about the people you pass every day. The woman stocking shelves at dawn. The man cleaning the lobby after you've left. The colleague who speaks only when spoken to but always listens. What if they've lived more than you know? What if their silence isn't emptiness but discipline? What if their stillness is control? Rachel Miles didn't ask for your respect. She didn't demand it. She just waited until you realized it was already hers. How many have you missed? Not because they hid, but because you weren't looking. This isn't a story about fighting. It's a story about failing to notice what's always been there. A story about how easy it is to laugh at someone when you don't think they matter, and how quickly that laughter dies when they remind you they do. Sometimes the loudest lesson comes from the quietest person in the room. Rachel never raised her voice. Not when they mocked her. Not when they filmed her. Not even when she stepped into the ring with someone who thought she was a joke. She didn't need to, because silence can be sharp. It can be deliberate. It can be louder than 100 shouted names when it's backed by truth. She didn't deliver a speech. She didn't ask for recognition. She delivered a punch. And in that moment, the world paused long enough to hear everything she'd never said. What followed wasn't applause, it was reflection, awkward glances, deleted clips, and one sentence taped to the wall. She didn't say a word. We heard her anyway. Some lessons echo. Others stay buried until the moment they land right where they need to. Rachel's didn't echo. It hit. The gym didn't make a big deal out of it. No plaque, no press release, no in honor of post. But it changed. Not all at once, not loudly, just in small things. Like how people folded the towels now, how the ring got wiped without being asked, how jokes didn't fly so easily toward the quiet ones anymore. Even the playlist played a little softer in the mornings. Rachel didn't just land a punch that day. She cleared the noise. She made space. Space for humility, for awareness, for the possibility that someone you're ignoring might be carrying something you couldn't begin to understand. Her legacy wasn't fame or followers. It was discipline, composure, and a presence that rewired the entire room without ever asking for permission. Think about it. Who in your life moves without being seen? The coworker who cleans the office after everyone's gone. The delivery driver who never makes eye contact. The student who always sits in the back, never raising their hand. They don't need a ring. They don't need an audience. But maybe, just maybe, they have something you can't measure with titles, noise, or confidence. Maybe they've been training, waiting, not to prove you wrong, but to prove themselves right quietly, consistently, relentlessly. So ask yourself, are you listening? Are you watching beyond what's obvious? Or are you still waiting to be impressed before you give someone your respect? Rachel didn't need your attention. She just needed one moment to remind you you were never paying enough of it. Rachel didn't get 15 rounds. She didn't need them. One round, one punch, one moment of undeniable clarity that was enough. Because real power doesn't ask for more time. It doesn't beg for attention. It waits patiently until the moment comes. And then it speaks with precision. That's what stayed with them. Not just what she did, but how little she needed to do it. No warm-up, no noise, no warning. Just a choice. A quiet decision to stop being overlooked without ever asking to be seen. That's why they remembered her, not because she fought, but because she didn't flinch. Because in a world addicted to noise, her silence was deafening. One round, one truth, and a lesson they'd carry far beyond the ropes. No one talked about it the same way again. The day Rachel Miles stepped into the ring wasn't just a story. It became a reference, a shift. The day the janitor dropped Eli started as a joke, but it didn't stay one, because the more people told it, the less they laughed. The details changed, but the silence stayed. The silence that followed her punch. The silence when Coach Ben said her name. The silence when people realized how badly they'd misjudged someone who owed them nothing. It wasn't just the punch that landed. It was the humility, the regret, The knowledge that the person they overlooked had once carried that same gym, taught in it, bled in it, built it, and still chose to clean it without complaint. Not because she had to, but because she was never too proud to do what needed to be done. That's the weight of that day, and it never left. Rachel never came back. Not for recognition, not for a rematch, not even to collect her gloves. They stayed on that hook behind the desk, dry, faded, a little curled at the fingers like they were still holding something. No one dared move them. Over time, the gym returned to its routine. New faces, new noise, but something in the rhythm had shifted. You could feel it in how people entered the ring with more focus, less ego. You could see it in the way trainers watched new members looking deeper, not just at their stance, but at their silence. Rachel never gave a goodbye, never explained herself, never said a word. She didn't have to. She left behind a standard, not written in chalk or marker, but in memory. And that kind of legacy, it doesn't fade, it lingers. She didn't say a word, but we heard her anyway. Not through speeches, not through comebacks, through presence. Rachel Miles reminded us that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it mops the floor quietly at dawn. Sometimes it absorbs ridicule without flinching. And sometimes it waits until the world catches up to what it underestimated. Her story isn't about revenge. It's not about a punch. It's about knowing who you are even when no one else does. It's about the quiet ones who walk among us carrying stories, skills, and scars we'll never see, unless we learn to look. So, here's the choice. Will you keep measuring people by volume, by title, by image? Or will you start listening for the quiet, because that's where the real power lives? If this story stayed with you, share it. Not for her, for the next Rachel who walks through your life.